Council Hall of the Galactic Union floated above a shining blue star. The chamber walls were built from silver metal and glass that shifted like water when light passed through. Thousands of leaders from many star systems sat in rising rows around a central platform. They had gathered to speak about a strange event that none of them fully understood. A signal had been found in the Rim sector, a place the Union believed empty for more than 2 centuries. That sector once held a planet named Terra. It was a Deathworld, a place with storms, fire, ice, and endless danger. Long ago, the Union had turned away from it. They thought nothing alive remained there. Now the Silent Zone was awake again. Commander Ral stood in front of the council. His scales shimmered with a pale green glow under the hall lights. Ral came from the Solari, a calm and structured species. His kind trusted numbers more than instinct. He was not a being who feared easily. Yet the signal had made him uneasy. He raised his hand, and the main screen behind him came to life. The sound filled the chamber. It was not language at first. It was low and steady like a heartbeat. Then came a single phrase. The words were spoken in Galactic standard. Every leader in the hall understood them. The voice was clear and cold. We remember. A wave of silence fell over the council. Ral kept his eyes forward. The transmission had lasted for less than 10 seconds before the signal cut out. No fleet should have been in that sector. No beacon should have survived that long. The Union had not seen a trace of humans in over 200 years. A tall figure with a crest of silver feathers stood from the upper rows. It was First Speaker, Talon of the Kyrie. His species had fought many wars beside the Union. His voice carried across the hall. This is a trick. The Rim sector has nothing left. The Deathworld burned itself to ash. Ral looked up at him. It is no trick. 3 scout fleets were sent to confirm the signal. None returned. Another voice rose from the opposite side. It came from a bulky shape covered in bronze plates. It was Magra of the Pharaohs. Then send more. This is not worth council time. It is only old ruins. Ral did not raise his voice, but it carried weight. I sent more. None returned. The council began to murmur. Some said it was pirates. Some said it was a hidden Union experiment. Some whispered the word no one wanted to say out loud, humans, 2 centuries earlier. Humanity had fought the Union in a war that scorched entire sectors. The Union had won, but at a great cost. When the last human fleet fell silent, the Union believed the Deathworld was gone forever. But history had always said that humanity was hard to kill. The High Speaker called for order. We will not fall into fear because of a ghost signal. Commander Ral, you will lead a direct fleet into the Rim sector. You will bring back proof of what is there. Ral bowed his head. He accepted the mission, though his chest felt heavy. His instincts told him this was not a simple search. Something waited out there. In the dark, where the Union had not looked for a very long time, 2 weeks later, the Union fleet entered the Rim sector. The stars here were dimmer than the rest of the galaxy. The planets were scarred and lifeless. Storms of black dust drifted between broken moons. The fleet's silver holes shone like sharp blades cutting through the dark. Ral stood on the command deck of his flagship. The bridge crew moved in silence. Screens showed the positions of each ship. The signal that had started everything pulsed ahead like a single heartbeat in the black. It came from the 3rd planet of a dying star, Terra. Lieutenant Sarn looked at the readings. His voice was soft but tense. Commander, the surface is active. There are structures with power. I detect movement. Life signs are present. Ral did not answer right away. No Union report had ever said life survived here. Yet the readings were clear. Something was down there. Prepare a scout team, Ral said. We land and confirm. The dropships descended through the thick gray clouds. They passed lightning storms that flashed across black skies. Once they broke through the cloud layer, the ground came into view. It was not the wasteland they expected. Towers of black steel rose from the ash like old bones. Strange lights moved along the sides of the towers. The ruins of ancient cities were rebuilt into something else. Something alive. The dropships touched down on a metal platform. The air was heavy and dry. Lieutenant Sarn and the scouts moved out. Their boots echoed across the platform. They found markings burned into the steel floor. The letters were old human script. Sarn bent down and read them aloud. "We rise again." Ral's voice came through the cum. "What do you see, Lieutenant?" Sarn looked at the walls. He could see shadows moving far above them. The shapes were tall and lean, wearing dark armor with glowing lines across their chests. "Commander," he whispered, "we are not alone." The shadows stepped forward. They were human, not the same as in old images from the war. Their eyes had a faint silver glow. Their movements were silent and controlled. One of them carried a small black device. It clicked once. The entire platform lit up with a pulse of red light. "Retreat to the dropships," Ral ordered at once. But the humans did not attack. They only stood there, watching with steady eyes. One of them spoke through a small amplifier on their chest. The voice carried across the platform, "Your time is over. Ours begins." The dropships lifted into the air, rushing back to the fleet. As they rose, the crew saw the full scale of the city below. Massive machines moved between towers. Long gun platforms were hidden under layers of armor. Thousands of figures filled the streets like a silent army. Terra was not broken. Terra was waiting. When the scouts returned to the fleet, the crew was silent. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Rael stood in the center of the command deck as the recording played again. The voice echoed through the air. "Your time is over. Ours begins." Rael sent the message to the council at once. The response came hours later. The high speaker's voice was sharp. "Do not engage. Hold position. Reinforcements will arrive." But Rael could not help looking at the tactical map. Red signals began to appear around the edges of their fleet. Ships that had not been there minutes earlier. Human ships, sleek, dark, and moving fast. They had not shown on any scan. They had been hiding under the dust and ash. "Raise shields," Rael commanded. "All ships prepare for contact." The first human ship appeared before the flagship. Its hull was black, like the void. Strange symbols glowed along its sides. It did not fire. It only hovered there like a predator waiting for the right moment. Rael stared at it through the main screen. A single transmission came in. The image was clear. A woman with sharp eyes and scarred cheeks appeared. She wore no crown, no military badge, only simple, dark armor. Behind her, hundreds of silent soldiers stood ready. "I am Mira," she said. "This world remembers everything. You thought it would stay buried? You thought we would fade. You were wrong." The image cut off. The black ship turned and vanished back into the storm without a sound. No shot was fired. But every officer on the bridge felt the same chill crawl across their skin. Back in the council hall, the high speaker slammed a hand on the table. "Impossible. They should not exist." Talon of the Kyrie shook his head. "Yet they do. And they have waited for this." McGraw of the Pharaohs rose to his full height. "Then we will crush them again." Raoul's voice carried across the hall through the transmission. "No, this is not the same enemy. They have changed. They were ready for us before we arrived." The council erupted in noise. Some called for war. Some called for retreat. Some demanded answers that no one could give. But above all the chaos, one truth was clear. Humanity was not gone. Humanity had survived. And the galaxy had forgotten what it meant to face them. On Terra, Myra walked through the halls of an underground command center. Screens glowed on every wall. Maps of Union space were marked with points of light. Soldiers trained in silence. Machines hummed like a living heart. She reached a massive steel door. It opened slowly with a hiss. Inside, rows of preserved war machines from the last war stood covered in frost. Their engines began to warm after centuries of silence. Mira placed her hand on one of the cold metal surfaces. Her voice was calm, but fire burned in her eyes. "They think we are broken. They will learn what it means to face a world that refuses to die." Outside, storms rolled across the blackened sky. The Union fleet floated on the edge of the system, unaware of the scale of what waited beneath those clouds. Humanity had been silent for 200 years. Now the Deathworld had opened its eyes once more. The Union fleet remained in orbit over the dead star. Every ship held its position with engines ready. No one moved closer to the planet, and no one dared turn away. The shadow of the Deathworld stretched across every screen. Commander Ral stood in front of the main viewing panel. The storm clouds below twisted like a living creature. He knew this silence was not safety. It was the quiet before something far worse. Lieutenant Sarn worked beside him. The young officer's hands moved fast over the control board. Commander Sarn said, "They are not hiding anymore. Their ships are rising from the lower orbit. Count is increasing every minute." Al's eyes narrowed. On the tactical display, more red signals appeared. Human ships were moving like a wave of shadows. Each one carried no broadcast code, no identification, no sign of fear. They formed patterns that reminded Ral of old war records. It was not a random movement. It was a battle formation. "Ready the defensive ring," Ral ordered. "No one fires unless I give the command." The fleet responded as one. Union cruisers turned outward, forming a protective wall around their carriers. Frigates moved into escort positions. Drones deployed in long strings like steel ribbons between the ships. The quiet hum of energy shields filled the air. In the council hall, far away, the high speaker stood before the council with a grim face. Reports from Ral's fleet scrolled across the display. Many members wanted immediate attack. Others feared what waited in the shadows of Terra. Talon of the Kyrie leaned forward. "They are not a broken people," he said. "They prepared for this moment." McGrath the Pharaoh struck the table with his hand. "Then we end them before they spread." The high speaker raised a hand to silence the noise. "You forget the lessons of the last war. Every step against that world cost us blood. We must strike with control. We cannot rush." On the planet, Mira watched the movement of the Union fleet on a large round table that glowed with soft white light. Her command center was buried beneath the steel bones of old. Earth, thick walls, and deep tunnels stretched like roots of an iron tree. Around her, soldiers and engineers worked without sound. They moved with practiced precision. They were children of a world built on danger. They had grown strong where others had fallen. A tall man with a scarred face stood beside her. His name was Kor. He had lived his entire life under the surface of Terra. "They wait," Kor said. "They do not strike. They are afraid." Amira shook her head. "They are not afraid. They are careful. The Union remembers the cost of war. They do not want to lose what they built." Kor glanced at the tactical screen. "Do we begin?" Mira placed her hand on the table. "Not yet. They must see what waits here. Fear works better when it grows slowly." She turned to the communication chamber. A tall screen rose from the floor. Her image would be sent to every Union ship in orbit. She stood straight, calm, and steady. When her face appeared on every screen in the Union fleet, she spoke without raising her voice. "You left this world to burn. You called it a death world. You thought nothing could survive. But your mistake was simple. You forgot who we are. You forgot humanity." On Ral's bridge, every officer turned to face the main screen. Myra's face filled the room. Her eyes were like steel. Her voice was steady like the hum of an engine. She continued speaking. "You came here with your fleets and your orders. You thought this would be simple. But for 200 years, we learned to fight without you. We built in silence. We prepared for the day when the stars would bring you back. You stand here thinking this is your war. It is not. This is our home, and we will not surrender." The image cut out at once. The silence that followed was heavy like a storm cloud. Sarn whispered, "Commander, she just declared war." He understood what had happened. The Union had lost the advantage of control. The Deathworld had taken the first step. Below the storms, the city of Terra moved. Massive gates opened across the dark plains. Hundreds of black ships rose into the air like a flock of night birds. Engines glowed with dull red fire. Their wings folded into long, sharp lines. At the same time, towers along the surface powered up ancient weapons that had been rebuilt over generations. These machines had slept under the ash since the last war. Now they were awake. Mira stood on a high platform, watching the fleet rise. The air was cold but alive. The sound of engines shook the steel under her boots. Kor stepped up beside her. "They will not leave now," Kor said. "No," Mira replied. "They will fight, and we will show them why they feared this world." The first wave of human ships climbed through the clouds. The Union fleet saw them as dark shapes breaking through the storm like silent knives. Energy signatures spiked across every scanner. The humans did not speak. They did not send warnings. They moved with perfect formation. Ral raised his hand. "Hold position. Let them make the first move." The first move was not a shot. It was a broadcast. A single message flooded every Union frequency. It was the same voice that had started it all. "We remember." The human fleet split into two arcs. One swept low across the Union line. The other rose high, cutting through the upper orbit. It was a move from the old war playbooks, but faster, sharper, stronger, the Union responded. Frigates shifted formation. Drone walls turned to shield the carriers. For a long minute, the two fleets circled each other, like two predators measuring the others. Strength. Then the first shot came. Human frigate released a bright streak of light that cut across the Union line and struck a drone cluster. The explosion flashed white and then fell silent. The signal was clear. The Deathworld had fired the opening strike. Union cruisers answered with heavy fire. Blue bolts filled the sky like a storm. Human ships danced between them, turning with sharp, unnatural precision. They moved as if they had been born for this kind of battle. No wasted motion, no panic. Only cold focus. Ral's ship shook under the impact of a near miss. Alarms filled the deck. "Shields holding," Sarn reported, "but they are faster than expected." Ral watched as 3 human ships broke through the outer defense ring. Instead of heading for the carriers, they struck at the energy relay stations. Their attack was not meant to destroy everything at once. It was meant to break the Union's balance piece by piece. On the council hall, panic grew. Each new report brought another loss. Human forces had hit strategic points with precision. Their numbers were smaller than the Union fleet. But they fought as if numbers did not matter. "They cannot win against our full fleet." McGraw shouted. Tolan shook his head. "This is not a straight war. They are striking where it hurts. They are forcing us to move the way they want." The high speaker closed his eyes for a moment. He understood what many others refused to see. Humanity was not fighting like a broken people. They were fighting like hunters who knew their prey. On the flagship, Ral made a choice. All ships tighten formation. Pull back from the relay stations. Focus on core defense. Do not chase. The officers followed his command at once. But the humans were ready. As the Union pulled back, the second wave of human ships rose from the lower orbit. It was larger than the first. Black ships filled the sky like a growing storm. Sarn clenched his fists. "Commander, if they attack with full force, we cannot hold for long." Arel looked at the display. "They will not destroy us all at once. They are sending a message. They want us to remember." On Terra, Mira watched the battle unfold through the command table. She saw the Union tighten formation. She saw the hesitation between their movements. She saw the fear that grew when speed no longer belonged to them. Kor stepped forward. "We can crush them now." Mira shook her head. "No. Let them breathe. Let them understand where they stand. Let them feel the shadow of this world. If they think this is only a battle, they will bring more fleets. But if they fear us, they will bring chaos." Her eyes stayed on the map. Fear is sharper than fire. Hours passed as both fleets circled each other. Human ships struck, retreated, and struck again. Union ships defended, repaired, and tried to keep their line unbroken. Every small victory for the Union was followed by a counterstrike that cut deeper. The rhythm of the battle belonged to the Deathworld. On the Union flagship, fatigue settled into every face. Ral could feel it. The battle was not just against ships. It was against their minds. "They are not just fighting us," Ral said quietly. They are teaching us to fear again, Sarn nodded. His voice was low. Commander, what do we do? Ral stared at the image of the dark planet below. We survived long enough to understand what they want. As the last wave of the day ended, the human fleet retreated back into the thick storm. No message followed. No demand. Only silence. The Union fleet hung in orbit, battered and uncertain. They had survived, but not won. The night over Terra was heavy. Myra stood again on the high platform. The black sky above was lit by distant fire. Kor joined her. They will not leave, Kor said. No, Mira replied. But now they understand. This world is no graveyard. It is a blade. The wind howled across the steel plain. Beneath her feet, the Deathworld's heart beat steady. Humanity had shown its strength, but not its full power. The Union now knew that it was facing something far older and far more dangerous than it had imagined. The Union fleet floated in the dark above Terra. The battle from the day before had ended, but its weight still filled every ship. The crew moved with quiet hands and lowered voices. No one laughed. No one spoke of victory. The humans had struck like a storm. They had not destroyed the Union fleet. They had taken away its pride. Commander Rao walked down the narrow hallway of his flagship. The lights above his head flickered in a soft blue glow. He passed crew members repairing panels and fixing damaged systems. The air smelled faintly of burned metal. Every face he saw carried the same look. Fear when he reached the bridge. Lieutenant Sarn was already at his post. Lines of data filled the main display. Red markers blinked in and out as human ships moved in the lower orbit. They were not attacking now. They were waiting, Commander, Sarn said. Scouts report more activity below the clouds. They are building something on the surface. We cannot get clear readings through the storm. Raoul stood still, staring at the screen. He knew the humans would not rest after the first strike. They were preparing for something bigger. Tell the Council that this is no simple uprising, Raoul said. They are not a broken people. They are building for war. In the council hall, the High Speaker sat with his advisors. The giant silver chamber felt colder than before. The news from the Rim sector spread across the galaxy like fire. Fear touched worlds that had not thought of Terra in centuries. Talon of the Kyrie leaned over the table. They fight with speed we cannot match. If we wait too long, they will grow stronger. McGraw of the Pharaohs raised his voice. Then we strike with everything. End this before it spreads. The High Speaker's hands tightened on the arm of his chair. You speak as if they are a small force. You forget the old war. We fought them once and paid with entire fleets. We cannot act with blind rage. Yes, the hall filled with low murmurs. Some wanted war. Some wanted talks. Some were too afraid to speak at all. The memory of humanity was waking up in every corner of the Union, on Terra. Mira stood before a large steel door deep inside the underground city. The door opened slowly, revealing a wide chamber filled with rows of old machines. Massive engines slept beneath thick layers of dust. Their edges carried markings from the last war. These were the war machines that had once burned across the stars. Kor followed her into the chamber. He looked at the massive shapes, with both pride and fear. These are the old ones, he said. They have not moved since the last war. Mira walked forward and placed her hand on the cold metal of one of the machines. It was a long black ship with scars across its hull. They will move again, she said. Engineers and workers entered the chamber behind her. The air filled with the sound of heavy steps and the hiss of machines waking up. Lights flickered to life on the warship's surface. One by one, the engines began to breathe again. Outside, human ships rose higher into orbit. Their formation was calm and tight. They moved like a single creature. They had no need for loud signals or flashy displays. They trusted each other. They trusted their world. On the Union flagship, Raoul watched the rise of these new ships. They were larger and stronger than the first wave. Their black holes reflected no light. Their energy signatures burned hot and steady. Sarn's voice carried a heavy tone. Commander, those ships are from old human records. These are war designs from the last war. We thought they were destroyed. Ral nodded slowly. We were wrong. The Union fleet increased its own formation. Carriers moved back. Cruisers shifted their lines. Fighters swarmed around like silver insects. But Ral knew their enemy did not fear this display. Humanity had faced worse. On the surface, Mira climbed a tall tower that overlooked the Black Plains. Her engineers worked far below, preparing launch bays and charging weapon platforms. She looked up at the night sky. The Union fleet shone like a distant wall of silver lights. Kor joined her. The Union is bringing more ships. Their reinforcements are close? Myra's eyes narrowed. Let them come. The bigger the wall, the harder the fall. She turned to the command table. A holographic map appeared above it. Red markers showed every Union position. Blue markers showed human forces moving into place. We strike when their reinforcements arrive, Myra said. They must believe they are safe before we cut them down. Back on the flagship, a message arrived from the Council. Ral read it in silence. The Council was sending the First Fleet to support him. It was one of the largest fleets in the Union. It would take 3 days to arrive. Sarn's face brightened for the first time in days. Commander, with the First Fleet, we can end this. If they are not ready for what waits here, they will end themselves. As the days passed, the Union fleet watched human ships build new lines in the lower orbit. They never attacked. They moved like shadows under the storm. Then, on the 3rd day, a bright wave cut through the dark. The First Fleet arrived. Hundreds of Union ships jumped into the rim sector. The stars burned bright from their engines. Their hulls carried the finest weapons in the galaxy. They spread across the sector like a silver tide. Cheers filled the lower decks of Ral's ship. Many officers believed victory was near. But Ral stood on the bridge with cold eyes. He had learned to fear quiet enemies. On Terra, Mira stood before her army. Thousands of soldiers filled the hangars. They wore black armor marked with the symbol of Terra. Their faces carried no joy, no doubt. These were the children of storms, the sons and daughters of a world that refused to die. Mira raised her hand. The noise of the hangars fell silent at once. They bring their fleets, she said. They believe their numbers can break us. They forget what kind of world made us. They forget that every step we took was on fire. They forget that we are not built to run. We are built to fight. Her voice echoed through the steel walls. Every soldier stood taller. Every ship engine roared louder. The First Fleet formed a wall behind Ral's forces. Their commander, Vorn, appeared on the main screen. His uniform was sharp, his face calm. Commander Ral Vorn said, "Stand down and let us finish this. You have done well holding the line. We will crush them now." Ral kept his voice steady. "Do not underestimate them. This is not the enemy from the old records. They are faster, stronger, smarter." Warren smiled faintly. "We are the Union. They are one world. We will end this in a single strike." The screen went dark. In the storm below, Mira gave the order. Human ships launched in waves. The old warships rose into the upper orbit. Their engines burned like fire. Their black holes moved through the storm as if the storm itself obeyed them. Kor stood beside her on the command platform. "They have gathered everything. They believe this will be the final battle." Myra's gaze stayed on the rising ships. "Then we show them how wrong they are." The First Fleet opened the battle. Hundreds of blue energy bolts lit the black space. The human fleet moved into the storm of fire with sharp turns and tight lines. Old Union tactics clashed with new human strategies. The black ships broke through the first layer of fire with minimal losses. Human warships targeted the fleet's communication hubs and energy stations again. They struck where it mattered. One hit at a time. One cut after another. On Ral's bridge, alarms screamed as reports flooded in. The First Fleet's front line was already breaking. "They are tearing through our systems," Sarn shouted. Ral leaned forward. "They know our structure better than we know theirs. This is not chaos. This is precision." On Vorn's flagship, panic spread fast. The First Fleet had size and power, but no speed. They had entered the Deathworld's shadow without respect. Now the shadow was swallowing them. Myra's fleet moved like a storm. Small attack ships slipped through gaps and disabled engines. Heavy warships opened wide beams that shattered formations. On the Union flagship, Vorn stared at the map. "How are they doing this?" he whispered. Ral's voice came through the comm. "They have been waiting for this day for 200 years. This is not an accident. This is their plan." In the council hall, the news arrived in waves. The First Fleet was losing ground. Their strength was turning into a weakness. Their wall of silver had become a cage. Tolan looked pale. Magra shouted for counterattacks. The High Speaker sat in silence. "They are Deathworlders," the High Speaker finally said. "We forgot what that means." Back on Terra, Mira watched the Union break apart piece by piece. Her people moved with a calm born from centuries of survival. They were not fighting to conquer the galaxy. They were fighting to make sure the galaxy never forgot their strength again. Kor stood beside her, his voice strong. "They are falling." Right. Myra nodded. "Not enough. Make them remember forever." Human ships cut deep into the Union Center. Explosions lit the dark. The First Fleet tried to regroup, but could not match the speed. Ral gave orders to protect his ships as best as he could. He was fighting not just to win, but to keep his people alive. Sarn turned to him. "Commander, if they keep this up, the First Fleet will fall." Ral's voice was quiet. "Then the Union will learn the price of forgetting fear." Hours later, the First Fleet was in full retreat. Human ships stopped at the edge of the storm. They did not chase. They only hovered like hunters watching prey flee into the dark. No human voice came through the comms. No demands. Only the heavy silence of a Deathworld that had spoken through action. On Mira's platform, Kor lowered his weapon. "We could have finished them." The news of the Union defeat spread across the galaxy like a burning wind. No one could stop it. Every trading station, every port, every colony heard the same story. The Union fleet had entered the Terran sector with pride and confidence. The Union fleet had returned with silence. The fleet that was once strong and feared was now only a list of names, lost in the darkness. Mira stood on the highest tower of the underground city. Around her, the surface was cold and quiet. Human engineers moved with speed and order as they prepared new launch pads and defense platforms. The sky above Earth was no longer still. It was filled with human ships rising from hidden bases. Old machines woke up after years of silence. Massive carriers opened their gates, and rows of smaller ships moved out like a living storm. The rise of Deathworld had begun. Inside the Union Council chamber, the leaders argued with each other. Ral sat at the far end of the table. He watched the chaos around him. Every species shouted for a different plan. Some wanted to attack again. Some wanted to make peace. Others wanted to run from Terran space. They were afraid to say it, but the truth was clear. Humanity was no longer a forgotten name. Humanity was a force. One of the senior council members struck the table with his hand. His voice shook the hall. He said they could not allow humans to control a part of space so close to the core trade routes. If they allowed it, the balance of power would break. But another leader stood up and said that if they attacked again, they might lose everything. He reminded them that humanity had fought back with almost no warning. If they were given more time to build, their strength would only grow. Ral listened to them with a calm face. He had seen the battlefield with his own eyes. He remembered how the Terran ships moved through debris fields as if they were born inside storms. He remembered the silence before their strikes. He knew that they were not fighting a weak enemy. They were fighting a people who had learned to survive in the worst place in the galaxy. Back on Earth, Mira walked through the central command room. Large screens showed movement of fleets, resource flow, and tactical maps of Union space. Her officers reported new shipyards becoming active on Mars and the Belt. The underground cities were now fully united. There were no separate groups anymore. Everyone moved with one purpose. She understood the weight of this moment. Humanity had hidden for too long. Now their voice was echoing across the stars. Her second-in-command, Rianne, approached her with a steady step. He told her about the growing panic among Union civilians. Rumors of Deathworld had taken root in their minds. Traders refused to enter Terran space. Some border colonies had already begun to close their gates. Mira nodded. Fear was their strongest weapon. It had already spread without them firing a single shot at the Union core. She turned to a group of officers and spoke with a clear voice. She told them to continue strengthening defenses, but she also wanted the message to reach deeper into Union space. Not a threat, but a reminder. She wanted the galaxy to remember who they had tried to erase. She wanted them to know that humanity did not forget in Union space. The fear grew stronger with each passing day. Border stations reported unknown ships moving near their sensor range. Convoys changed their routes to avoid Terran zones. Miners abandoned outer belts because they were too close to Earth territory. A few Union commanders sent patrols, but most returned with empty hands. They never found the enemy. They only found silence. It was the kind of silence that made them afraid to sleep. The Union tried to control the story. They told their people that the Terran threat was under control. They said that the Union would protect them. But deep inside the hearts of their people, doubt had already formed. They had seen the list of lost fleets. They had heard the whispers of survivors who spoke of ships that appeared like shadows and vanished again. No one could stop the fear. Raoul was ordered to return to the border. He stood on the bridge of his ship and looked at the stars. His crew moved around him with quiet faces. They were loyal soldiers, but even they could not hide their worry. Raoul felt a heavy weight in his chest. He was not afraid of death. He was afraid of fighting an enemy that did not follow the rules of war. Humanity was not playing by Union methods. Humanity was rewriting the field. On Earth, the night skies were lit with bright lines as more ships launched into orbit. Mira stepped onto the deck of the flagship. She looked at the fleet stretching across the sky. It was no longer a hidden force. It was a storm ready to move. She spoke to her officers about the next phase. They would not attack yet. They would let the Union break itself with fear. She knew their enemies well. They were proud, divided, and slow to change. Fear would make them weaker without a single Terran strike. Meanwhile, in Union core worlds, riots began to spread. Civilians demanded answers. They asked why the strongest fleet in the galaxy could not defeat a single planet. They asked why their leaders were silent. The council held meeting after meeting, but no plan satisfied everyone. Every decision created more cracks. Raoul knew that the Terrans were watching. Mira's intelligence team sent encoded signals into Union networks. They did not send threats. They sent recordings of Earth rising again. They sent images of fleets, shipyards, and a flag flying in the wind. These images spread across Union space like a spark in dry grass. Civilians saw it. Soldiers saw it. Everyone remembered the old stories about Deathworld. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was patient. Inside the council, pressure built like a storm. Leaders accused each other of failure. They blamed commanders. They blamed spies. But no one had a solution. The Union had grown too used to being the most powerful. They did not know how to fight an enemy that rose from the ashes. With fire in its heart, Raoul stood before the council and finally spoke. He told them the truth. He said the Terrans were not like any other race. They were born in storms. They survived things no Union species could imagine. If they wanted to win, they could not rely on pride. They would have to change everything. His words were met with silence. The council did not like hearing the truth. Back in Terran command, Mira received the latest intelligence. She saw Union fear growing faster than expected. Rian reported that several border colonies had already withdrawn from Union control. Trade routes were breaking apart. Without firing a single large-scale attack, humanity had begun to weaken their enemy from the inside. Mira understood that the real war was not always about battles. It was about breaking the heart of the enemy before the first strike. Night fell on Earth, but the planet did not sleep. Every factory, every port, every launch site worked without pause. The people knew what was at stake. They were not fighting for glory. They were fighting for survival. And survival had made them strong. Stronger than anyone in the galaxy expected, in the darkness of space, Union fleets moved closer to Terran borders. Raoul stood on the bridge again and gave quiet orders. He did not know if peace was still possible. He did not know if war could be avoided, but he knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy would never be the same again. On the other side, Mira watched the same stars. Her fleet was ready. Her people were united. She had waited for this moment all her life. She was not looking for surrender. She was not looking for mercy. She was waiting for the Union to understand their mistake. The echo of Deathworld was now loud and clear. Every corner of the galaxy could hear it. The Union felt it in their bones. The time of silence had ended. The storm was ready to move. And when it moved, no one would be able to ignore the rise of humanity. The great ship Resurgence moved through the black space like a silent mountain of steel. Around it, hundreds of smaller human ships floated in tight formation. Their metal hulls were scarred from battle, but still held strong. The stars behind them looked calm, but everyone aboard knew this was the calm before the storm. Ahead waited the largest fleet ever formed by the Galactic Council. It stretched for thousands of kilometers, with ships from 20 different species gathered together. Every color, every shape, every kind of weapon that the galaxy had ever built was now pointed at one world, the world that refused to die. Earth Commander Reed stood on the command deck of Resurgence. His eyes were calm as he watched the screen showing the enemy formation. Around him, his officers moved quickly, checking systems and preparing for battle. They did not show fear. They had grown up under the endless drills of Earth's underground cities. Trained by veterans who had survived famine, war, and the cold silence of extinction. They were not soldiers born for glory. They were survivors who had decided never to kneel again. Reed raised his voice across the bridge. Today the galaxy will see that humans do not beg for mercy. They will see that we return not for revenge alone, but for truth. His voice was clear and steady. We fight to remind them that Earth remembers. Across the fleet, the transmission played. Men and women of the Deathworld listened in silence. Each of them carried the memory of the Great Collapse. Each of them knew how their ancestors had been hunted when Earth's power had faded. Now they had come back to face the galaxy that once called them monsters. The alien fleet moved first. Thousands of ships lit up as energy weapons charged. The void of space filled with bright lines of plasma fire. Reed gave no order to dodge. Instead, the human fleet stood still, letting the enemy see the target clearly. At the last second, invisible shields activated, bending the energy around the ships. The attacks passed harmlessly into the void. Alien captains shouted in confusion as their sensors failed to read the human technology. They had seen shields before, but nothing that could hold against the full strength of the Council's united fleet. Reed gave his first command. Fire Pattern 1. The fleet responded as one. Missiles streaked forward, silent but deadly. They were not guided by computers but by human minds linked through neural networks. Each missile curved around enemy defenses with the instinct of a predator. They struck command ships first, cutting through shields like knives through thin cloth. Explosions lit the darkness. In seconds, hundreds of council ships were gone. The humans did not cheer. They simply reloaded. The council admiral, an old scaled creature named Harvox, tried to rally his forces. His voice echoed across the command lines of many species. Do not let them advance. They are few. We are many. Crush them before they reach the center. But even as he spoke, his fleet broke formation. Human ships moved through them with surgical precision, never wasting a shot. Every time the aliens thought they found a weakness, the humans vanished and reappeared from another angle. On Resurgence, Reed's second officer Mira watched the tactical screen. Admiral Harvox's carrier is trying to retreat, she said. He wants to regroup. Reed nodded. Let him. He must carry the message. The battle lasted for 6 hours. When it ended, the council fleet was shattered. Thousands of wrecks drifted silently. Fire burned across the stars. Only a few ships managed to escape. The humans did not chase them. They had made their point. Reed looked at the screen showing the council's capital world far away. "Open channel," he said. The communications officer activated the broadcast. Every remaining ship, every planet connected to the council network received the message. Reed appeared on their screens, calm and steady. With the mark of Earth shining on his uniform, "Citizens of the galaxy," began. "You have feared the word Earth for centuries. You told stories of monsters born from a death world that could not be tamed. You said we were gone. You said we were defeated. But you were wrong. We watched. We learned. And now we return." Paused and continued. "We do not come to conquer. We come to remind you that the galaxy once stood on our bones. We come to remind you that freedom has a price, and Earth has already paid it in full. To those who helped destroy our home, your names are recorded. We will find you. To those who kept peace and honor, we offer friendship. Choose now. Fear or respect. There will be no third path." The message spread faster than light, reaching planets and stations across known space. On distant worlds, people whispered in disbelief. Some called it a lie. Others remembered old data from the days of Earth's fall. In the quiet halls of the council, the leaders sat in silence. They had expected an invasion, not a declaration. Admiral Harvok survived the battle. His ship was damaged but still moving. He requested a direct link with Resurgence. Reed accepted. The alien appeared on screen, his scales cracked and his eyes tired. "Human," he said, "you have won this battle, but you cannot rule a galaxy through fear." Reed shook his head. "We do not seek to rule it. We seek to wake it. For too long, your council ruled through comfort and silence. You built empires on the weak. You called it order. We call it decay. Humanity will not let that continue." Harvox lowered his gaze. "And if we refuse?" Reed's answer was simple. "Then you will face the death world again." There was no anger in his voice. It was calm and final. Harvox ended the link without another word. Days passed. The wreckage of the battle was cleared by drones. Human ships helped rescue alien survivors, giving them supplies and medical aid. Many aliens were shocked. They had expected revenge, not mercy. But humans treated them with respect. When asked why, a human medic said, "We were taught that mercy is strength. Revenge alone is empty." Soon, news spread across the stars that humans were rebuilding old trade routes. They reopened lost colonies and restored communication lines once thought destroyed. But they also placed watch stations in every system that once belonged to the Council. They called these stations Eyes of Earth. Each one carried the same message carved in metal: strength through honor, not fear. Months later, the Council called for a new meeting. This time, they invited humans to sit among them. The chamber was filled with tension when the doors opened and Commander Reed entered. He walked calmly, his black uniform clean, his eyes steady. The counselors looked at him in silence. The oldest among them spoke. "You have brought both fear and peace. Why should we trust you?" Reed answered, "Because we do not ask for your trust. We ask for your truth." The galaxy fell asleep while Earth burned. That time is over. We will not allow the same decay again. Stand with us, and you will have peace. Stand against us, and you will face our will. His words were not shouted. They were quiet but carried power. The counselors exchanged glances. They saw in him what history had warned them about the fire of the death world that never died. In the months that followed, change spread fast. Trade laws were rewritten. Slave markets were closed. Old corrupt houses were removed from power. Humans did not rule these changes directly, but their presence made every species think twice before acting unjustly. Every time a planet forgot, a shadow of human ships would appear above it, reminding them of the price of arrogance. Children across the galaxy began to learn new stories about Earth. No longer were humans the monsters of legend. They were now called the guardians of balance. Old enemies became cautious allies. Even Admiral Harvox, once the leader of the fleet that tried to destroy them, sent a message of respect. He said the death world has returned, and perhaps the galaxy needed it. Years later, when the stars shone peacefully again, Resurgence became a monument orbiting Earth. Inside its hall, the names of all fallen soldiers were written, both human and alien. It was not a monument of victory but of survival. Reed stood there often, looking at those names, remembering the cost. Mira joined him one evening. "Do you think they will ever stop fearing us?" she asked. Reed smiled faintly. "Fear fades. Respect stays. Let them learn that." Outside, the blue glow of Earth filled the window. The planet that had once been silent now sang again with life. Cities rose from old ruins. Children played under open skies that their ancestors had only seen in memory. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as teachers born from pain. The galaxy watched and learned. Every species remembered the lesson written by the Deathworld, that strength was not in domination, but in endurance. That peace built on fear would always fall, but peace built on respect could last forever, in time. New travelers from distant worlds came to visit Earth. They came not with armies, but with gifts, seeking to understand the world that had once shaken the stars, and every visitor who looked upon Earth's surface understood why it was called a Deathworld. It was not because it destroyed life. It was because it refused to die. From that day, every star map carried a new symbol near the center of the galaxy. A single mark shaped like a rising flame beside one word that no one dared to forget Earth.